Daniel Harper did not plan to stop in the small Vermont town, yet the train delay forced him onto the quiet platform just as evening settled. And in that brief pause of life, everything shifted because he saw Emily Carter standing near the old iron bench. Her coat pulled close, her posture calm but guarded, and in that instant his past rushed forward without warning, not as noise but as feeling, sharp and warm at the same time, and he understood that whatever reasons once pushed them apart had lost their power the moment his eyes found her face again, older now, shaped by time, but still familiar in a way no memory could replace. He stayed still, afraid movement would break the moment, while the station lights flickered on and the air filled with the distant sound of a train horn, and Emily turned as if she sensed him, her eyes meeting his with surprise that softened into recognition, then into something harder to name, because it was not joy or sadness alone but a mix of both, layered with caution, and they shared a quiet look that said more than words ever could, reminding Daniel of how their story never ended with anger, only silence, the kind that grows heavier with years. And as they walked toward each other without rushing, he noticed small details, the way she held her shoulders with confidence, the way she paused before speaking, showing she had learned patience from life, and when she said his name softly it felt like a door opening inside him that he had locked long ago, and he answered with hers, steady but full of meaning, and though they spoke little, time moved fast around them as if the world did not care about unfinished stories, but Daniel cared, deeply, because standing there made him realize how much he had carried this unfinished feeling through different cities, jobs, and quiet nights, always telling himself it was over, always believing distance would erase it, yet here it was, alive and clear, and Emily seemed to feel it too, though she masked it behind polite calm. And as they walked toward the nearby cafe to escape the cold, Daniel felt the weight of every step, knowing each one brought him closer to a truth he could not ignore, that he had never stopped wanting more, not in a reckless way, but in a deep, steady longing for connection that felt honest and rare. And inside the warm cafe, surrounded by soft lights and low voices, he watched Emily sit across from him, her eyes thoughtful, her hands still, and he understood that part one of their story was never about falling in love but about realizing, years later, that love never truly left, it only waited for the right moment to speak again. The cafe felt warm but the space between Daniel and Emily felt careful as they sat across from each other, the sound of cups and low voices filling the silence while snow brushed against the windows, and Daniel spoke first, not with rehearsed words but with honesty, asking how life had treated her, and Emily answered in a steady voice, telling him about Toronto, long workdays, quiet apartments, and nights where she learned to enjoy her own company. And as she spoke he saw strength in her that hadn't existed before, not loud or proud, but calm and earned. And when it was his turn he talked about Chicago, career success that looked good on paper but felt empty inside, and relationships that stayed shallow because his heart never fully stepped in. And as their words moved faster, the years between them shrank, not through memory but through truth, and Daniel realized how much time had passed without either of them really finding what they were searching for. And Emily admitted she thought distance would make the past fade, that moving forward meant not looking back. But life had a strange way of bringing unfinished chapters back when least expected, and when Daniel said he hadn't expected to still care, the honesty landed between them like a quiet confession, and Emily did not reject it. But she didn't accept it either, instead reminding him gently that caring did not always mean returning, and that some doors were closed for a reason, and Daniel listened because he respected her growth, yet inside he knew something had shifted, because whatever once stood in their way now felt small compared to the clarity he felt sitting there. And as the coffee cooled untouched, they spoke of choices, of fear, of the cost of staying and the cost of leaving, and Daniel admitted that walking away years ago had been easier than fighting for something uncertain. But easier had not meant better, and Emily confessed that silence had protected her, but it had also left questions unanswered, and the snow fell heavier outside as if the world was slowing to match the moment, and Daniel felt a deep pull, not toward the past but toward the possibility of honesty, and he realized that wanting more did not mean asking for promises or rushing time, it meant being brave enough to say the truth without knowing the ending. And as they left the cafe together, stepping back into the cold night, he sensed that part two of their story was not about rekindling something old, but about facing what time could never erase, and whether they were ready to let it shape what came next. They walked through the quiet streets with snow under their feet and city lights glowing softly around them, not touching yet fully aware of each other's presence, and Daniel felt every step like a question waiting for an answer, while Emily stayed thoughtful, her pace steady, her silence full of meaning. And when they reached the bridge overlooking the frozen river, she stopped, resting her hands on the cold railing as if grounding herself, and she spoke about fear, not the loud kind but the slow kind that grows after disappointment, explaining how she had built a stable life by choosing safety over risk. And Daniel listened closely, understanding that love had once asked more of her than she could give, and he admitted that he had hidden behind work and movement, telling himself he was strong while avoiding anything that could break him again. And the wind cut through the air as Emily turned to face him, her eyes searching his face for certainty he could not promise. And when she asked what he wanted now, Daniel answered without hesitation that he wanted honesty, even if it led to pain, because pretending had cost him more than loss ever did. And Emily held that truth quietly, weighing it against the life she had built, and for a moment she reached out, brushing his sleeve, a small action filled with meaning, showing she was still human, still moved, still torn, and she confessed she did not know if she could open her heart again without losing herself. And Daniel replied that wanting more did not mean rushing forward or erasing boundaries. It meant choosing to be present and real, even in uncertainty. And the river below stayed frozen and still, mirroring the pause between them. And when Emily finally stepped back, saying she needed time to think, Daniel felt disappointment but also respect, because forcing a moment would only repeat old mistakes. And as they continued walking in silence toward the station lights, he understood that part 3 of their story was about standing at the edge of choice, where desire met wisdom, and where love asked not for action, but for patience. Morning arrived with pale light and fresh snow, and Daniel stood on the quiet platform with his suitcase beside him, feeling the weight of the night still pressing on his chest as trains came and went, each sound reminding him that time did not wait for unfinished stories. And he told himself that if Emily did not come, he would accept it without anger, because wanting more also meant respecting her choice. Yet hope stayed with him, steady and warm. And when he finally saw her walking toward him through the thin crowd, his breath caught, not with excitement but with relief. And Emily stopped in front of him, her eyes clear, her voice calm, saying she had spent the night thinking, not about the past but about who she had become. And she explained that fear had once guided her choices, but living only for safety had left her wondering what might have been. And Daniel listened without interrupting, understanding that this moment was not about promises or grand words. And when she said she did not know what the future held but knew she did not want to keep running from feelings that felt true, he felt something settle inside him, quiet and strong. And he told her he was willing to move slowly, honestly, without pressure, because connection mattered more than speed. And as the train doors opened behind him, neither of them rushed, standing instead in the soft morning light, choosing presence over fear. And when Emily said she was ready to try, not because the past was perfect but because the present felt real, Daniel smiled with gratitude rather than relief, knowing this was not a perfect ending but a thoughtful beginning. And as they stepped onto the train together, he understood that part 4 of their story was not about getting everything they wanted, but about choosing to want more in a way that honored growth, trust, and the courage to begin again.